Hi everybody, I'm Amy, this is my wife Maggie,
Hello.
and together we are ThinkerThemer, and we're so excited because we are headed to GenCon again this year.
Exciting.
How exciting. And so of course we've been coveting all of the games, researching as much as we can, and making that shopping list, in my case, always.
Or spying list. You know,
yeah.
there's a lot of things I'm not going to necessarily be able to shop for.
No.
But you're going to be able to see them, demo them, try them out, see if it's going to be, you know, a good fit.
Although already planning to bring a huge haul of games back home to Australia with a spare suitcase, so there will be some buying that will be had.
Absolutely. It's like GenCon is just, there's just too much. It's just so big and there's just so much going on and so many shiny things.
So excited. Yeah. Anyway, we thought we'd do some of your homework for you, hopefully, and help you put together a list of games to check out. As usual, we've put down in the description below all of the names of the games, but also the location, as far as we're aware, in the vendor hall, the booth number at GenCon. So use that to mark your maps when you're starting to think about getting prepared for GenCon if you're headed there. If you're not headed there, well then ignore all that information, but this is a good list.
Sit back, relax, and just enjoy the games.
But it's going to be a good list, yeah, for all of the upcoming retail titles, of course, because they will hit retail eventually. And if you find lists like this helpful, please subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out, and we are always publishing content like this about upcoming releases.
Yeah.
So let's get into it, but I want to start with two games that are not going to sit in our top 10 list. So Maggie and I have both made our top 10 list, but these are two games that are being released at GenCon that we are lucky enough to have already played in detail, covered on the channel. And these are two games that I would say absolutely run, don't walk. Get those games.
But also walk.
But actually walk, because you're not allowed to run in the vendor hall. So please don't run and
just run.
Don't say ThinkerThemer told us to run.
Yeah. In spirit. Run in spirit. Yeah.
Get over to these booths because number one is Fit to Print. Fit to Print is a game that I absolutely fell in love with.
That was quite a lot of fun.
It was so much fun. This is by Flatout Games. It is, and we've covered it on the channel if you want to see the video. Actually, we covered it on Rado's channel. So we did a playthrough. Yeah. But what's really cool about this game is it is real time, and I love the stress of real time games.
The stress is real, the time is real.
Yeah.
The scorings are final.
Yeah. What you're doing is you're putting together a newspaper.
The front page of the newspaper. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's going to consist of newsworthy stories that are either good news or negative news that you're trying to balance out. There's a lot of different adjacency rules with the different tiles you're going to be putting on your newspaper, and you're going to have to be grabbing these newspaper tiles from this central
mountain
supply.
of chaos.
And then you're going to be adding them to your desk at your office. And the real problem with this game is you can get overconfident because in the first phase of the game, you're just filling up that desk. And in the second phase of the game, you get to place them onto your newspaper. And so you can be too greedy, get too many tiles, and then work out that they actually don't fit together or that you haven't balanced the right type of article. Yeah. It's a great game. And I was so sad when they asked us to send back the prototype. This is a game that I just love introducing people to.
Yeah, some lucky backers get to have the prototypes now, and we're like, no.
I was like, no, so
but it's okay. Like, we're gonna go and get some copies as well. So that's fine.
Go and check that one out. That's the first one. The second game that is releasing, I believe, at GenCon, which was another big hit for us, which was a surprise hit for us because it is cooperative, and it's set in the Isle of Cats universe. It's by the City of Games, and it's called
Race to the Raft.
Race to the Raft.
Did you have a momentary?
Did I have a moment? No, I was going to let you talk.
Oh, that's nice.
Why don't you tell us about the game?
Yeah, so in Race to the Raft, we are helping save the kittens, or not the kittens, the cats from the island that's catching fire, and it's very, very stressful. And so we're cooperating to try and figure out the different tiles, I guess, that we're going to be placing that are going to create the paths, because these cats are very peculiar and they only like to walk.
probably peculiar as well, but they're very particular in that they...
There's an ESL moment where I'm like, what's the difference between peculiar and particular? Anyways, they're very picky, let's say, and they only really like to walk in the path that's their own color. So you actually end up having to create these paths from where they start all the way through to where the raft is. But as you're playing, there's more and more fire overtaking the island and cutting off paths. So it's very, very thinky. It's one of those games that it's sort of campaign style. So you evolve, the difficulty evolves over time, over multiple games. But we had such a great time playing
this, especially with our family. It was just it's a challenging game. There's also this meowing token that I love, that because there's limited communication in the game, but you can use this meow token to just like hint about what you don't want the player to do with meows. So as they place in the tile, which is really fun. It's a really cute game. Go and check that out. Excellent game in the Isle of Cats series. But now let's get straight into our top 10. Now, my number 10 is a bit unusual for us these days because we don't play that many expansions or buy that many expansions, because when we return to games, it tends to be the base game. We don't get a lot of time for expansions. We're always moving forward. But this one caught my eye because it's for a much loved, I would say, call almost indie game, but very
quirky.
It is very quirky. It's the expansion for Cosmic Frog called Find Muck. And what's interesting about this expansion is it really brings 3 different elements to the original base game. So if you're aware of Cosmic Frog, it's a very chaotic game in which you're playing as these giant frogs.
Psychedelic frogs in space.
Yes, and you are using unique abilities and powers to try and gobble up the universe into your gullet, and then you're going to be trying to create different stacks of terrain and attacking other players. There's battles. It's crazy. One of the craziest things about this game, I have to say, is the turn order, because it's dictated by a deck of player colored cards. And so sometimes you might have 4 turns in a row, and then you don't have a turn for ages and you're just sitting back waiting for your turn. Anyway, pure chaos. But this new expansion Find Muck adds 3 different elements. The first element that it adds a terrain type that acts as a wild in your gullet. And so that just opens up the game a little bit more. I think that will just be interesting to help you achieve your goals, of course. But the second thing it introduces are mental powers that you can use.
Like psychic abilities type thing?
Yeah, that's right. So, for example, normally you could just attack another frog, but using these mental psychic powers, you can force another frog to attack you. So you can
manipulate and influence them to
you're,
like do something that they may not necessarily
You're
want
influencing the other frogs and therefore the other players. But so that's one element. So that's going to introduce a whole heap of new powers. There's also new ability cards, which people are always excited about, because it's the main thing in that game where your core ability can get changed throughout the game.
Quite a lot.
So that's really cool. More is more from that perspective. But what I am really interested about is a mechanical change which moves away from dice combat and introduces a series of tokens, so randomized tokens. And I'm wondering how that's going to change or mitigate against the luck in the game. So that comes as part of this expansion. So I'm really interested to check that out. It will be available for sale there. Go and check it out if you're going to be at that booth. Usually the owner and designer is there, and he's super, super lovely to have a chat to.
And the artwork is so like psychedelic and cool. And like last time we even picked up a poster of one of the frogs.
Which is on our wall, but you can't see it here. But it's so, so great. And so that is Cosmic Frog Find Muck.
Now for my number 10, this is going to be a fairly light, fairly family-friendly, but so unbelievably cute game. And it's called Diced Veggies. Now in this game, you are quite literally fulfilling recipes of foods that you're trying to cook. And for that, you're going to be needing veggies. The veggies are represented by dice of different colors. But at the way that you set it up is you have this cardboard border that then you use to put all your dice into, and it creates like this block of dice. of all these different colors, however they manage to kind of land in there and whatever pip number they manage to land in there. And then you have a cardboard cleaver that you're going to be using to slice off different bits from that, that main veggie block. And the rules of, so already the components are really, really super cute. And as a concept,
they always do such a good job.
Yes, the concept is also so cute. The rules when you're slicing is obviously you can't slice something from the middle. You always have to be slicing things from the edge that you can easily then sort of take out. It can't be like diagonal or anything like that. But also the sum of the pips can't be higher than 10. So that's the other then consideration that you're going, oh, sometimes you might be able to get a little block of 4 dice that comes out, or only 2 dice, depending on the values of the pips. And none of them go down to 1. So I believe 2 is the lowest number. And then as you're getting them, you're going to be obviously allocating them to your recipe. So very, very simple, but it just looks so adorable. And I just kind of want to see the production. I believe this is going to be a demo only at this stage.
Yes.
Yeah. So that is my number 10, Diced Veggies.
Now, my number 9 is another game that is ready to go. You can buy it from Allplay Games, and that is the 2-player trick-taking game Sail. Now, this game is a re-implementation, reimagining this, a few rule changes that have been made, but it's a Japanese game called Hamlin Cave originally, and now it's got all new artwork.
Beautiful artwork.
A few rule changes, yeah. And this game is, as I mentioned, a 2-player cooperative trick-taking game. And so what you're going to be doing is you're going to be working together to get the sailboat from one end of the board to the other. And you're going to have to navigate through different terrains that are going to be blocking you to make that goal harder. And that's not the only reason why it's hard, because what you're going to be doing is as you start a round, you're allowed to exchange some cards based on what you think your strategy is going to be. And then it's a must-follow trick-taking game. So each of you are going to be playing a card out of your hand and evaluating, who wins that trick as usual. But what's interesting is there's an action that occurs off the back of the symbols on the cards. So when you are able to match the symbols on the cards, then something is going to happen. It might move the ship or something else. I'm not sure the full suite of actions, but I think that's how it works. And another thing that's interesting is along the way, you are going to be taking damage from the Kraken. And when you're taking damage, it's going to actually muddy up your deck. And so then you also need to be doing things to clean out your deck as well. So, even just following along with these rules, it seems like the game is going to be really hard. I believe the original Hamlin Cave was actually quite a difficult game, whereas Sail has been made a little simpler. And I think there are ways in Sail where you can, increase the difficulty more slowly as you get better and better and more proficient. I believe Taylor from Taylor's Trick Taking Table was involved in the development of the game.
Oh, nice.
And so, I'm really excited to pick up a copy of this because you cannot find the original anywhere. I tried in Japan.
We definitely tried.
Yeah, we did. But that is Sail.
My number 9 is a game called Avant Carde. So this is not avant-garde, related, but Avant-Carde. It's a card game. It's a deck building game. And so in this game, you are art collectors and you're trying to have the most impressive art collection. And the way you're going to be playing this is, well, one, the cards are beautiful. I think the artwork is actually definitely what's drawing me in the most to begin with. But then it's a fairly, and I love deck building games as well, but it's a fairly seemingly straightforward premise in that what you're doing is you're using your cards, which are colors and numbers, or numbered colors, and then you're trying to create the longest possible string of cards together by, for example, playing one card. So say I play a 4 and it's a blue 4, then the next card, if I can, is going to be either another blue card or another 4. So you need to keep matching either the number of the last card played or the color. And so trying to kind of organize and play cards from your hand in that order. because then the longest whatever number of string of cards you manage to put together, that's going to be your purchasability. So say, for example, if I manage to put 4 together, then I've got a $4 purchasing power, and then I can buy a card, deck building style, from the market of cards, and the cards are usually worth whatever their numeric value is. Now, the other side of this is whenever you manage to get 6 coin or kind of 6 cards at a time, a string of 6, then you're going to be able to win awards. And those are essentially going to be the main points by the end of the game, is whoever has won kind of like the most awards will be the winner. But then also all those cards will have different abilities that then mean that as you're playing them, not only are you trying to make the most logical or the longest sort of possible sequence, but then you're also keeping an eye on their power, and the power is consistent for whatever that number card is, because again, that's going to break some of those, like sort of add different features and abilities. So it looks from it's a very I think it's going to be a fairly satisfying and very easy to teach, probably hard to master kind of type of game. I love deck building. I love the sort of concept of then ending up with a much...
chaining is really clever for the purchasing power. Like, I'm really interested by that mechanic.
Yeah, so that's
really good.
That's my number 9 Avant card.
Yes, but I'm just going to add to that if you are there, and we will be there, you know, checking out this demo of Avant Card, you should also maybe check out the other game that's being released by Resonym Games that is available for GenCon, and that is Retrograde, because this is a game that I looked at on Kickstarter. I didn't back, but I'm really intrigued to see it in real life. It's a real-time arcade-style Space Invaders game where, you're in real time trying to roll dice and cross them off as fast as you can. And I just really love the theme of that because I love arcades. So I'm going to check that out as well. That's just a little add-on to Maggie's number 9.
Nice.
Now, my number 8 is another version of Great Western Trail. It is Great Western Trail New Zealand, and what's freaking me out is after I made this list, I had a look at our previous Gen Con list, and last year, my number 8 was Great Western Trail Argentina.
There you go.
So it's exactly
very consistent.
The same spot. Had you asked me last year about where New Zealand would rank in my list, I thought it would be much higher because I am from New Zealand. I am a Kiwi. Most of my family are actually in New Zealand, and so I've been anticipating this for a long time, ever since it was announced. But after playing Great Western Trail Argentina, it slipped down a little bit lower than what I would have thought, only because Argentina made the game a lot more complex, and I do still really love the original and the fact that it doesn't have so many of those things. It's more like that whole expansion question. Anyway, but coming back to Great Western Trail New Zealand, I'm still excited to see how it works. I've read a little bit about some of the new changes. So instead of instead of just cows, you've now got sheep.
That's what I'm most excited about. I want to see how the sheep are integrated, brought into the game.
Well, they're brought into the game in quite a few different ways. So thematically, what they're bringing to the game is that you can shear the sheep from your hand along the way to make money as you go along the trail. So you can shear sheep in order to make money. You can also do deliveries that aren't just of sheep, but I believe you can do whole wool deliveries because each of the sheep have like a shearing value associated with it. So you can just deliver wool instead of sheep. So that's pretty cool. But also they have an interesting element, a different element in the way that they work with the hand management, deck building side of things, because normally the cows that you've got left over in your hand, you're just going to be getting a new hand of cards, right? Like as you go to Kansas. But in this game, if you have a pair of sheep in your hand that you are not doing anything with, then they actually stay in your hand, therefore muddying up your hand, and you're not refreshing your hand. I believe that's how it works. So that I think is an interesting element. And of course the train has been taken away, so there's no train at the top of the board. It's now you're sailing around islands, and it works very much in a similar style to the Rails to the North expansion of the original base game, where you're kind of unlocking islands, and then it allows you money to then go back to that same island and like unlock more and more bonuses.
Yeah.
There's also a few changes that have been made to the workers. The workers are different, of course, but the game allows you to have, I think there's wild workers. So that means
versatile. They adjust and adapt to whatever you need.
Yeah, I think they've slightly changed the game so that you can't get locked out of a certain type of worker. Okay. You know, when you're always like, I really need some cowboys, but everyone keeps taking them and that's really frustrating. So that might change that dynamic a little bit. And then there's also these new cards. So I think it's called the Explorer Bird Track, because New Zealand has a lot of unique birds. I think it's to do with birds. Someone correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. But you are adding those cards to your hand, and when you get them into your hand, you can choose when you use them if you want to use them, and they're going to give you little bonuses along the way. So another little element that's being added into that kind of deck building aspect of the game. Nice. So I'm intrigued to try it out. The one thing I will say is, like, I looked at the artwork and it didn't feel like overly Kiwi to me. It definitely has the green rolling fields and it's got the islands, but something about it didn't quite have the right tone.
Did they go more with the Great Western Trail?
No,
artwork?
It's a bit more like island, like a different, you know, like tropical island. I don't know. The colouring is very bright, and if you've been to New Zealand, it's like you know, it's more wintry.
It
and,
is,
But
it's
anyway,
like beautiful sceneries, but they're usually more on the kind of like
stunning
overcast
scenery.
Not overcast, but more toned down, kind of.
Yeah. So I'm interested to see it in real life. It is only a demo at GenCon, and I remember last year with Argentina on demo, it was almost impossible to sit down and get a chance to play because everyone went. So I don't know if we're going to get a chance to play it, but definitely going to spy over some people's shoulders and check it out. That is my number 8, Great Western Trail, New Zealand.
My number 8 is actually Amy's number 7, so this is convenient. We'll just talk about it. Yeah, we'll talk about it at the same time. So this is My Island, which is kind of like a follow-up to My City, the Knizia game, which is a campaign where you're kind of over time building up, well, in My City, you're kind of building up your city. In this one, you're building up your island, which is made up of different shapes that are sort of groups of hexagon tiles sort of joined together.
Yeah.
And like with any campaign game, you're going to start out fairly simply, and then things are going to be added, and rules are going to become more complex. And
so My City, if you remember, or if you've played it, it is polyomino tiles. So we've shifted from polyomino to these hexagon tiles, slight change. But also, I imagine, you know, there's going to be new things that happen along the way. I will say that we are only halfway through our My City campaign. But really enjoying it, or we were enjoying it, and then we got distracted and went on to something else. But it's the kind of game that is very gateway friendly, and it does start really simply. I've seen the first campaign for My Island because that's what people are allowed to talk about so far. But basically, there is an island and it's surrounded by sand, and so in the first campaign, basically you're trying to lay tiles and not have any sand remaining, and you're not allowed to build into the middle of the island. I imagine that the terrain will change as it goes on. Just like in My City, you'll probably be applying stickers and things to mix up the board. But yeah, I'm really keen on this one too, because it's just, you know, there are campaign games where it's just so overwhelming to think about, like something like Frosthaven or Gloomhaven. You're like, oh, it's going to take up my whole
very
life.
Daunting. And, big, huge commitment of time and mental effort. And
but I'm a really big fan of more of those, like, it's almost filler, but like light style games that when you don't feel like getting into something new, you can play a short game of this with the same group of people, and it still gives you that sense of like momentum, like it's still evolving and it still feels like you've experienced this journey together. So I'm really excited to check it out. It's only available for demo. I wonder if it's going to actually be an Essen release. I'm not sure on that, but we'll definitely be picking up a copy when we can to tell you more about it. But that is Maggie's number 8, my number 7, My Island.
So my number 7 is a game that crowdfunded recently called Wild Gardens. And this is, again, one of those games that is just so visually stunning. Like, the artwork in this is so beautiful. I love, love, love the theme. You're essentially foraging. So you're going to different locations using kind of worker placement type mechanics to forage for different ingredients. And then those ingredients you're going to be using to make recipes, but you can't. There's a theme
There's
now.
a theme to your list.
There's some recipe making, a lot of cooking, but then there's also this element of like kind of making recipes for your different friends. So there's different friends that have different wants and needs, and some of them, you know, are hungry for lunch, and some of them are hungry for breakfast or whatever it is. And so you're going to try and match the things that you're kind of cooking to that. Now the game looks absolutely beautiful and stunning. It's one of those. It looks fairly kind of like sort of medium complexity, I would say. But I can foresee that I'm going to have so much fun with all of the different components and the different, just a beautiful artwork alone. We actually are featured in one of the...
We are!
Yeah, in one of the, like, it was one of the stretch goals, I believe. So for the, different kind of content creator friends. So we're potentially, depending on the copy that you get, some of the friends that you get to feed. And so we've even got...
Please feed us.
Yeah, feed us. Yeah, so we've even got, you know, what are the things that we actually really like? Like, what are the things that we're going to feel like eating? So I'm really excited to check that one out. So
I'm excited to check that out too.
So
it does look absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, so that's Wild Gardens, my number 7.
On to my number 6. And my number 6 is a 2-player battle between octopus and shark, and it's called Kelp. And this game is beautiful. The designer of this game, he was actually inspired by My Octopus Teacher, which, if you haven't watched that documentary, go and watch it on Netflix. It's amazing. And I watched it too, and, you know, got all emotional about it. And so I read when that was the inspiration for the game, I was like, I have to check out this game. And the game is gorgeous. It is basically 2 players. One is playing as an octopus, and this octopus is trying to remain hidden and out of the way of the shark because it doesn't want to get eaten, obviously. But basically, the game board has a series of mahjong-style tiles on it that are standing upright. One of them is the octopus, and the other is just like weeds, and you are basically trying to hide or obscure your position. So you'll be moving that around, trying to get the octopus to not be where the shark thinks it is. The other thing you're trying to do, though, as the octopus, is you're trying to eat because you still need to survive. So you need to go out and actually find food, but you need to do it in a way that is not going to alert the shark as to where you are. So that's going to give the shark hints as to where the octopus is located. And of course, if your role is the shark, then in this deduction game, you are going to be trying to work out where is this octopus and moving around. And in the prototype, the shark itself is a little physical shark that moves around the water. Cute. It's really cute. But then there's something to do with dice in the way that you're going to be trying to narrow in on where the octopus is. And then I believe when the shark finally finds the octopus, it's not all over. There's some kind of battle that occurs that involves cards. So I don't know. It looks intriguing to me. I'm not usually that much of a fan of hidden deduction, but I really do enjoy the theme and the overlay to this and the physicality of the board. I do love a good 2-player battle as well. Like, obviously we play a lot, just Maggie and I, and so I really like that element of the game. Kelp is not going to be there in terms of having a booth. I believe they're going to be set up in the prototype hall, or try and find out more information and put that in there for you. But I'm looking forward to hunting that down and hunting down an octopus if I'm the shark. I imagine I'm going to be the shark. You're the octopus.
Yeah, like
Are we running?
I usually am. Yeah, and I also call you the shark. There's like, you know, Amy's a shark. I'm like, you're a shark, baby. You know, you go get that.
Fun backstory. One day, I said I had a busy day at work, and I said I'm going to have to be sharp. And Maggie thought I said, I'm going to have to be a shark. And she said, you are a shark, baby. And that's how supportive Maggie is. Like, even when she heard me wrong, anyway, we still joke about that all the time. That is not relevant to Kelp, but that's my number 6. See it in the prototype hall, Kelp.
Now, my number 6 is actually another campaign, and that is Sagrada Artisans. So this is the campaign for the Sagrada game that is very well known and well loved, even though it's not a game that we've actually played that much. Doesn't see the table as much at our house because it's fairly abstract, even though I love the colored dice that really kind of help kind of represent all the different stained glass windows of the Sagrada Familia, the actual church that it's based on. I don't know why. I think it's because it's a little bit more on the abstract side, and it just doesn't. And I don't tend to kind of engage with that as much. But this, like the thought of this now being turned into a campaign, I love the thought of being taken on a journey. But also, it's now making it slightly differently because now it's actually a roll and write. So it's not just like kind of like the classic dice. And the roll and write is not just like roll and write, it's like roll and color in. So you're actually creating these really beautiful kind of color in different maps or different stained glass sort of creations with different colored pencils. So I'm actually like, I feel like this is going to be, every game is going to have that sort of very relaxing, sort of almost like mindful element to them. So I'm really looking forward to this.
I'm looking forward to checking that out too. There's so many good games.
There's a lot of good games. And I believe, so one of the concerns with this initially was that once you've gone through that, you didn't really have a way of replaying it because obviously you've drawn on all the maps and then that's done. But I believe they've brought in kind of not really like a recharge pack, but yeah, different like map sets that you can buy to then, or just like, a replacement map sets so you can actually go through some of those. I don't know if maps is the actual term, but yeah. So those designs,
beautiful. And now moving into my number 5, this is a game that I have been trying to get my hands on for so long. It feels like so long because last year at GenCon, I saw this game being demoed and someone had told me, someone who I do respect their opinion of games, had said, hey, just on the quiet, try and pick up this game. It's really good. And then I saw the artwork of it.
It's really beautiful, yeah.
Sea, Salt, and Paper. It is a beautiful card game where the artwork is all origami style. So all of the illustrations are with origami. It's really, really beautiful. Anyway, I saw it, and this was before Pandasaurus picked it up, I believe. And so it was with the original publisher, and I was like, how do I get my hands on this game? And he's like, there's no copies. So ever since then, it's been on my to-buy list, to hunt down list. And now I know a little bit more about the game than I did back then. But it's actually a really simple card game. And, you know, when people are talking about playing it, they say at first it just seems like maybe a little too simple. And then it's one of those games that really grows on you. And then the strategy becomes really clear. And then everybody else learns the strategy. And then you've got to like level up your game. But anyway, what you're doing is you're playing cards out of your hand down in front of you into like a tableau of points that you're collecting. And once you have scored at least 7 points, I believe, you get the choice of whether to end the round, and end the round for everybody. So either you stay in because you, for some reason, want to keep collecting points, or you're going to end the round. And then if you end the round, you have 2 choices. One, you can just stop, and that means that everybody will score the points that they have. Or you can take a gamble and predict that you're going to have more points than anybody else. And it's not an easy thing to do because it's not just the points that are down in front of you and your opponents. It's also, there are hidden cards in your hand that are also going to give you points in different ways. Yep. So you can make that prediction. If you get that prediction wrong, you're going to lose a lot of points. If you get it right, you're going to get some bonus points. So yeah, that's kind of the premise of the game. There's also these mermaid cards that if you actually get 4 of them, you're going to win the game instantly. So that's another dynamic. And then a further dynamic is if nobody goes out because everyone's like, oh, I need to get more points, need to get to more points, and the deck in the center runs out, then nobody gets any points. Ooh, okay. So you've got to keep an eye on that as well, I imagine. So I'm looking forward to picking this up. Don't think it's going to be very expensive, just a little card game to pick up. That is from Pandasaurus, and it is Sea, Salt, and Paper.
Now, on to my number 5. This is another campaign game. It's a bit of a narrative game called Eila and Something Shiny. Again, another game that is visually, just aesthetically beautiful. So beautiful. And it's just such an endearing little story, it seems. So it's really, I believe it's like this little rabbit that you're following on this journey, and it's, again, it's sort of like a narrative type campaign, so story driven.
For one person.
Yeah, it's a solo. Yeah, I should have led with that. So bye. So it's a solo campaign, and along the way you're going to encounter like different kind of little puzzles and different kind of, sort of more gamey elements. But then you're also going to be collecting different resources and making very key choices that may help you or hinder you down the track. And apparently it sort of starts out quite easy, and then the difficulty really ramps up towards the end. So I'm more like, I'm just really curious about it, because I am often distracted by many shiny things. So it's like Maggie and something shiny could very well be the game. So it feels very relatable to me. So I'm very, very excited. And that's all I really have to say about it.
I don't know how you're going to get through all these campaign games. There's a lot of campaigns to see out the rest of the year.
Yeah, that's it. I'm just going to have to quit work and just do this. Go through all these games.
Now, my number 4 is a game that is just another one of those obscure Amy titles that I've been trying to hunt down for a while. I saw it once in Japan and didn't buy it. And then I could not stop thinking about it for the rest of the time. And of course, then I could not find it again.
Wonder got
Classic.
away. Yeah.
My number 4 is Tiger and Dragon. And this is a title that was from Oink Games. So everyone will be familiar with their small box games. This is a slightly larger box game from them. But when they released it back a couple of years ago, it sold out instantly.
Okay.
And it sold out in Japan. I don't even know if it made it to other markets or not, but basically everywhere where it was, sold out. So it's been really hard to find. But I believe they will have it at GenCon. So that is the rumor. I don't know if it's true or not, but they did have it on the preview list.
Okay.
So I'm excited to try and pick the game up. What is the game? Well, basically it's a shedding game, but with mahjong tiles.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So you are basically trying to get rid of all your tiles, or as many as possible. And you do that through attacking and defending. So one player will, I believe, attack with a tile, and then the other player is going to have to respond. I think the game is either played in pairs or with 2 players, or in a 4-player game. I think it's played in pairs. But what you're going to be doing is responding with an attack of the same number. And then there's something to do with a certain combo that you're trying to end your hand with. So all of the mahjong tiles are being played out onto a board in front of you. Honestly, it looks really simple, and I'm not sure what else there is to it, but it's just been one of those games. It just gets into my mind, and I'm like, I must find this game.
Everyone was hyped about it, and so you're hyped about it.
And now I'm passing on the hype. This is what happens. Full disclosure, I do not know if this is a good game or not, but it's one that I'm really going to be hunting down.
We don't know if any of these are going to be good games. We haven't actually played any of these, except for the ones at the start that we have actually played.
Yes.
The ones that are not part of the top 10. So,
anyway, I'm sure many people will be hunting down other Oink games, and I'm going to be trying to find this really random one called Tiger and Dragon, my number 4.
So my number 4 is actually higher on Amy's list, so I'm going to park that to the side and move on to Amy.
Okay, so my number 3 is actually another card game on my list. I'm going through a bit of a card game phase. And so this game is called Inheritors, the card game. And I have actually been thinking about this game because last year at GenCon, again, somebody walked past me and said, hey, you both should check out this game. I don't know if you remember this. And they showed me the box cover, and ever since then, it's been in my mind, but I didn't know where it came from. And basically, it comes from NorthStar Game Studios, who are also launching Eila and something shiny, so that we'll be there buying 2 games. But this game, Inheritors, is a card game where the theme is that the king is dead and everybody now is vying for the throne. It's a tale as old as time.
Indeed.
But in this case, the game is actually quite abstract. What you're doing is you have a set of cards in your hand, of course, and what you're I don't know why I always say of course. At most card games, you have a hand of cards. But what you're going to be doing is you're going to be creating runs of cards in front of you, or piles that are basically starting from 1 and then they are ascending up in value. And so you can't start a new suit pile until you've got the 1 for that, and then you're going to be building onto it. And the reason why you want to be building onto these piles is because the highest number that you end up with at the end of the game is going to form your score for the game. But also there are many other reasons why you might want to have particular combinations of numbers. There are secret quests that you're going to have, so your own objectives that you're trying to achieve. Then there are also public objectives that you're trying to race the other opponents to get. And what's also really interesting is when you get to 3 build up to a 3 in any one of the suits, you're going to be able to get the associated asymmetric power. You can only get one of those throughout the entire game, and then that will come down into your tableau, and now you've got that power as well. So there's a few different things going on here. There's also cards in your hand that have special abilities, and what you're trying to do in the game is you're really trying to get the right cards by interacting with a market of cards that is a shared market for everybody, which has 3 piles of cards in it. Sometimes you're going to be able to take the whole pile, sometimes you're going to be able to swap out cards. So you're basically interacting with that in a way to achieve your own goals and build up your piles. Okay. So it seems really interesting. It seems like a lot of game with, one small deck of cards. So whoever you were, if you're the person that walked past us and said, hey, you should check out this game, who are you? Are you the designer of the game? I'm not sure. I just remember seeing it, and then it was in my brain.
You provided Amy with things that have haunted her dreams now for a year.
There you go. But actually, now that I've read about the game and watched some reviews of the game, really intrigued to pick it up. That is my number 3, Inheritors.
So my number 3 is also higher on Amy's list, so we're going to, again, park it to the side. But I believe now we're going on to your number 2,
which is your
actually
number,
my number 4.
Confusing. Right. But anyway, the game is Barcelona, and it's the new title by Board and Dice that will be available for sale, and I'm super excited about it. The box art alone.
It's so beautiful.
Gorgeous.
Really striking colors, really bright colors, which I love.
But one of those games as well where I didn't know much about the historical context of the game, and so it kind of sent me down a rabbit hole of learning all about that. The game is set in 1860, and it's really interesting because it's at the time where Barcelona was growing outside its original city limits, and so it engaged a whole heap of architects and
it was the most
city planners.
Populous city, I think, in all of Europe. So it was just bursting at the seams, sort of,
And enter Carde, who was now the most famous kind of urbanist or urban planning historical figure, because he was an engineer and he was well ahead of his time. So if you've seen the grid-like structure of these parts of Barcelona where there's the diagonal roads that go through it to allow transport through, he was planning all this before people even had motor cars, and he was already designing it for motor cars and for hygiene and all these elements that people hadn't thought of before. He was also a real utilitarian in that he believed that it shouldn't just be wide open streets for the wealthy, but actually, the whole city should be beautiful for all classes. And also, I believe it was the start of the kind of modernist architecture. All the wonderful things that we know about Barcelona. So anyway, in this game, you're essentially going to be contributing to this new city of Barcelona. And by the way you're going to be doing this is building up the city in terms of its roads and intersections and buildings and things, but you're also going to be placing out a passenger. You're going to be placing out a citizen tile into an intersection. And what's really interesting about this game is where you place that citizen is going to trigger an action or actions on the basis of the intersection point of rows and columns and the diagonal streets in line with the design of the city. And so then you can play out those actions to get things done that are going to give you victory points, and it feels like a bit of a point salad in a way.
That's what I love. It's like that whole thing of, classic Euro. There's so many different ways of collecting points. There's end-game sort of things. There's things that you're kind of tracking and improving and giving you a bit of an engine and So I think that's why that and the beautiful artwork.
You're also going to be moving population around, and I believe that's to represent the people who moved into the new parts of the city. So that's going to be occurring as well. There are trams, and the tram is like a little wooden tram that you're going to apply stickers onto. I was reading about that in the rule book, and that's super cute as well. So you're going to be moving your tram around. So there's all these interesting ways of getting points in this game. And Board and Dice, of course, they always do a great job of these Euros. So just really excited to check that out.
Terracotta Warriors was the Terracotta Army, I should say, was what was the game that we kind of ran to as soon as the doors opened.
And it paid off because delivered. I love that game. Anyway, that is my number 2, and Maggie's number 4, Barcelona.
So my number 2 is a game called Forges of Ravenshire, where we play as different critters looking to be the next Forge Master.
Cute.
super cute. And so in this game, I believe it's kind of like dice worker placement, very Euro-y, very, again, a sort of recipe fulfillment. But the recipe here is not actual food. We're actually forging.
Order fulfillment.
It's order fulfillment, yeah, you're right. So we're forging different artifacts. It might be, a shield or a sword or armor or things like that. And so I believe the way it works is you're going to be using some dice to place into kind of like the center kind of town area to take an action, usually to get resources, so that then you can forge your items that you're going for. Then you're going to take items. So there's a bit of also like a dice retrieval or worker retrieval that then allows you to get more resources based on. I think this one is then based on the color of the dice that represents the guild that it's going to be a part of on your workshop. And that activates the guild powers as well. So there's a lot of different kind of elements, and there's some of it is actually simultaneous play, which I love when you have that simultaneous action games, because it means that the games kind of run pretty quickly.
And it means you don't have to pay attention to my turn.
I love that. I love not having to pay attention to what anyone else is doing, just like working on my own little thing. And obviously, like, all different Euros, you've got different either objectives or things that you're going to achieve if you're the first one to achieve this particular thing. And so, yeah, you play, I believe it's maybe 3 different rounds. And then obviously whoever has the most money at the end will be the winner. So I'm really intrigued by this one. I believe it's only a demo, unfortunately, because otherwise it's probably one that I would just snap up if I could just buy it. But very excited for that one. That's Forges of Ravenshire.
And my number 1, as well as Maggie's number 3 at GenCon, is unfortunately just a demo. So we'll just be hopefully being able to get a sneaky game in of the demo. Yeah. But it is Kutna, or a City of Silver. And this is a Euro game that has a economic overlay to it, particularly in relation to the resources. And the resources have these little sliding cardboard things.
Yeah, which apparently I think they're calling computers, but that may be wrong. But yeah, it's essentially those cardboard indicators.
It's just a cardboard slider that shows the value of each of the resources at any given time that you're going to be paying for with silver, I imagine. And the way that the game works, though, is that there's these cards that you have that have 2 different sides, so you can orient them up one way or the other, and then you're going to be playing them down to play different actions. And what you want to do is you want to be able to get the rights to build certain buildings. You need to be able to buy land to put the buildings on, and then you're eventually going to put those buildings down. And what's interesting is each player is aligned with I think a few different guilds, and so when you are getting things done in the game, you're going to be influencing the price of those resources. So I think an example would be, if you are building a particular type of building that belongs to a guild, your production of that resources goes up, but the price of the resource goes down.
Supply-demand balance. Yeah.
So there's a lot of like tensions in the game that are built into the dynamics between the different players and the guilds that they represent. And so I'm really interested in that, because apparently you can change out, the guilds that you're associated with, and that changes the feel of the game.
It's got very much asymmetric sort of player boards in the sense that you start. And I believe they become even increasingly more asymmetric as you play the game, because then obviously you're going to be doubling down on one area or another.
Yeah, normally we don't like a lot of asymmetry when it comes to like player powers and things like that, but I like this because it's related to the actions that you're taking in a very Euro-esque style game, hand management, resource management, all of that type of thing.
So many Euro things that I love, but I really do love that the central economy concept. So even in games where it's implementing a fairly basic level, like Clans of Caledonia, for example, where you have the players are influencing, all of a sudden the price of goods is not always the same, and then all of a sudden you're having to pivot and adjust. I love that.
I love that too. Yeah, we both really like games like that.
Your workshop, and then all of a sudden getting super powerful and being able to like do this amazing thing. It's like, I love that sense of progression.
And the illustrations are so beautiful. The buildings themselves on the tiles are just gorgeous. So CGE have done a wonderful job of that, and I can't wait to see it in demo form at GenCon. That is why it is my number 1 and Maggie's number 3, Kutna Hora.
And my number one is a game called Luthier, which is by the same sort of team, part designers of Distilled, which was one of the games that I really, really enjoyed from this and kind of last year. And in Luthier, it sort of takes place in the peak of classical music in Europe, and you are a musical instrument craft person. So you play as one of the different Luthier families. That's the name for that craft. And so you're going to be, collecting resources to craft all these beautiful musical instruments for, hopefully Beethoven or Bach or Mozart, and so you're going to be using a worker placement type mechanic. This is my understanding, but there's also an element of hidden bidding, because those workers have different powers or level of ability, and so that's actually on the kind of down, like one of the sides has a number that determines their strength, and so then you're going to be obviously placing them onto the boards, not necessarily knowing what people's strengths are that are going into those locations.
Yeah, so the turn order will be dictated by the strength. So that is one element that kept the game out of my top 10, I have to say. I've played games like that before with worker placement and the ranking, and I prefer to have open information, so I prefer to know if I'm going to be able to do something, but that doesn't mean I'm not interested in this one, because Dave Beck and the Patterson team did a fantastic job of Distilled. And no doubt they will be treating this subject matter in exactly the same way. It looks really great at the moment, and actually Vincent DeTrate is doing all of the artwork for it, so it's going to also just look stunning, fantastic as well.
Well, one thing that came out of Distill is like there was such a thought into how everything mechanically had some correlation to what that element thematically would be. So I love going into a game feeling like I'm really kind of going to feel like I'm stepping into that, I'm going to become that family, and I'm going to be very invested in going, and learn elements of how that craft actually works, or some of the tensions that you would have if you're in that time period or trying to achieve those goals. And obviously all sorts of different goals and improvements and different tracks that mean that your strengths or your skills improve in different areas. So lots of fun stuff to dive into, I think.
Looking forward to checking it out. So that is our top 10 games for GenCon, plus a couple of extras. We are going to be busy, as you can see, running around trying to see all the games we want to see. We might have to divide and conquer.
Absolutely.
What are you most looking forward to at GenCon? Please let us know in the comments below, as there's something that wasn't on our list that is just the top of yours.
There's a lot of games that are going to be featured there. So yes.
And if you see us at GenCon, please come up and say hi. We would love to meet you. Sometimes we don't connect the dots between, obviously your photos are not on YouTube like our faces are, so come up and say hi and let us know your YouTube handle, because we would love to meet in person, and chat games. And if you liked this video, please hit like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and we'll be back with more board game and GenCon content soon. But bye for now.
Bye.